And what we're doing today is something that I love that the Drive-In podcast does that not many other, I don't think any other movie podcast does. We are going to talk about how Mad Max Fury Road has aged these last 9 years. We're going to talk a little bit about George Miller. We'll talk about a little bit like we've already done with Anya Taylor-Joy. Then we're going to take a break in the podcast. We're going to go see the movie and then give you, the audience, our instant reactions. Ricky Flex, I was thinking we have to name this something, right? We have to name this type of thing. Like we did it with Dune Part 2, right? Where we did like a re-review of Dune, then we went to go see Dune Part 2, and then we like had our instant reactions all bundled up into one episode. And I'm getting a vibe. It's like drinks at a movie, you know? I want to call this beginning like where we get really hyped up for the movie, like a pregame. We call it the pregame. We call it happy hour, something like that, where we can just chop it up as if we are going to Applebee's. We're sitting at the bar with our Uncle Steve, and we are just reminiscing about 2015 and then talk about how jacked we are to see this movie.
The pregame. We're pregaming right now. That's what we're doing.
Pregame. That's it.
Simple.
Yeah, let's kick off the pregame by reminiscing a bit with 2015's Mad Max Fury Road. So Furiosa is a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, obviously. Ricky Flex, I want to get your vibe of what you remember about Fury Road in terms of not just like give me a rundown, a synopsis of the movie. Don't give me the plot of the movie. Just like take me back to 2015. Let's hop in the DeLorean and just tell me what sticks out regarding Fury Road.
Yeah, no. Fury Road, interesting because, 1985, Mad Max Thunderdome, that was the previous one, right? Like that, it was freaking 30 years. And Mel Gibson, a lot different person than 30 years ago, back in 2015. And I wasn't a Mad Max guy. I'll say that. I watched the first two Mad Maxes, Thunderdome, I did not see. But I think Thunder Road is the second one, and then Mad Max, the 1979 version, I've seen. And I don't not like them, but I remember watching them back in like when I was like 13, so a little before 2015, and I just was like, I don't know if this is for me. I like them, don't love them. I don't know. I just saw John Wick. Like I don't know if those for me. And then Fury Road comes out. And then I am now digging albinos needing human body bags. I am digging the heavy metal guys playing double guitars while going 90 miles an hour in big souped up V8 trucks and cars. I don't know. I guess Tom Hardy, Charlize Theron, two actors I really like, especially Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy was in his absolute bag in this era. Like this is probably peak Tom Hardy in 2015. If we're actually like picking a peak for Tom Hardy a year, 2015 would be that for Tom Hardy. That is definitely was for me. So yeah, like I think before Fury Road, now a Mad Max guy. Post Fury Road, I am definitely hyped up. This is the besides Deadpool and Wolverine, my second most anticipated movie of the summer. And like I said before, Anya Taylor-Joy now. It's like taking up the mantle. Chris Hemsworth, we all know on this pod, I'm a big Chris Hemsworth guy. Outside of Marvel, trying to do something different here. Bad Times at the El Royale didn't hit the same to the heights that I think we wanted it to. For him, maybe this will. So I think a lot of things from 2015 to now, a lot of hype has been built up from it, and I think I'm now a changed man going into this movie.
Changed man. Interesting. I was never a Mad Max guy. I didn't even know it existed before 2015. Mad Max Fury Road came out. I didn't know it was the fourth installment. I didn't know that Mel Gibson was in 3 previous movies, right, to Mad Max Fury Road. I didn't know Tom Hardy was playing a character that was previously played by Mel Gibson. I had no idea about any of that, right? And when finally I'm interested in the movie, I'm going to see the movie, and I hear it's the fourth installment, legacy sequels before they were cool type of thing. I was like, I want to see this because of Tom Hardy. And this is, I would say 2015 is pretty much prime Tom Hardy. You're thinking Bane, right, as the main big bad in a Christopher Nolan Batman movie. Then he has The Revenant, Oscar nominated in 2016. What's happening in between that? Oh, he's in an absolute classic, an instant classic with Mad Max Fury Road. Mad Max Fury Road, I remember. Also, I want to say, why do I not know about Mad Max? Well, our dad loves 80s movies, but like this was coming out. This was an action sci-fi franchise that literally is coming out at the same time as both Star Wars, and it's coming out like the original trilogy and Indiana Jones. Right, the years of the first three Mad Max, it's like 1979, 1981, and 1985. Like Star Wars is 77, 80, and 83. Like I feel like Mad Max was a franchise that kind of got left in the dust, right? George Miller is like a obviously a great visionary, but he is not mentioned really in the same breath as George Lucas or Steven Spielberg. And Mad Max Fury Road was kind of where people finally gave him his flowers, right? The much deserved flowers of George Miller. When I was growing up, I knew George Miller as the guy who had the failed Justice League movie, right? The guy who wanted Armie Hammer as Batman. Unfair to say in 2024, but that's what I knew him as, right? And then Fury Road comes out, and then he's getting nominated for Best Director, he's getting nominated for Best Picture, and this guy's just like an absolute phenomenon, and I had no idea who he was for decades. You know, do you feel like that's what Fury Road was to him, like a coronation kind of, or like a justification, like he deserves all of the the recognition. He deserves more recognition than what he's gotten in previous years.
I don't know how to say this without being disrespectful, but I don't consider George Miller to be a great director, as in like on that same pantheon.
Visionary sci-fi filmmaker. I think he's B tier. Like he's right below Lucas and Spielberg. Like what he's done with Fury Road and now Furiosa.
Yeah, I put Spielberg like because Spielberg could do it all. George Miller, outside of the Mad Maxes, has Babe and Happy Feet. Like this guy.
Yes, I'm talking about their franchises came out, and I feel like he's the forgotten son. Like he's the forgotten son.
And yeah, I think B level is fine. And there's a reason he's forgotten son because there's that tier of just the Indiana Jones and Star Wars that were coming out during that time that just took the world by storm because that's the A tier. I just think Mad Max is I don't know. There's something about it that just doesn't, get you going like Indiana Jones does. It doesn't connect to the audience as much. Maybe it's because it's, post-nuclear wasteland and people just weren't into that in the 80s versus Indiana Jones nostalgia or Star Wars, just that type of sci-fi was more interesting from a visionary's perspective.
Shiny new toy.
Yeah, exactly. Shiny new toy is a great way to put it. So this is more like, oh, well, this is based off of a nuclear gone wrong oil crisis type of situation, and then just cars banging into each other. That just wasn't as enticing back in the 80s, and I would say it's not as enticing now versus because it's the big IP. And in 2015, there's a reason why George Miller didn't make a Mad Max for 30 years. It's like Star Wars. There's a reason. There's of course a reason why Star Wars was made during the time to the prequel trilogies from from Return of the Jedi. But Indiana Jones was in the mix. Lucasfilm was becoming a real studio. It just wasn't the same. So I just put George Miller in that B tier. And yes, visionary for sure. Fury Road cemented that. But without Fury Road, he would probably be even worse.
Yeah, like the Mad Max movies never were juggernauts at the box office the way that Star Wars was and is, and Indiana Jones was, because we know the reason Indiana Jones movie certainly wasn't a juggernaut at the box office. Sorry, James Mangold, we're massive fans. The highest grossing Mad Max movie is Fury Road, which is under $400 million globally at the box office, right? And what I remember about this movie is, like I said before, it was an instant classic, right when it came out. And it felt like everyone says, this is different, this is new, post-apocalyptic world. The setting was used so insanely well in this movie, right? It's an incredibly desolate, devastating world, has some ugly creatures, but you can't help but marvel at what George Miller put to screen, right? It was something where you knew, when it was released, this is getting nominated for Best Picture. And it was kind of, it stood on its own compared to other action movies. It transcended the traditional action movie, right? It was the beginning of the legacy sequel that now is so popular in 2024. Mad Max Fury Road was there first. It was there first. And you know what I also remember Fury Road for, Ricky Flex? This was the first time where I heard about a movie, I saw a trailer, and then I looked at the Rotten Tomatoes score, and the Rotten Tomatoes score made me think I have to see this movie. This was a movie that was consistently at a 99, 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. And this is when Rotten Tomatoes was really starting to take a stranglehold on people's on their decision whether to see a movie or not. And when I
Yes.
saw that, I'm like, everyone thinks this is good. There's no way this movie's bad. This is the example of like, yeah, they were right. Like everyone is right. It's like early movies like
Whoa, whoa,
Moonlight.
whoa.
Moonlight is the next year. It's like 98%. And then you have 2017 Lady Bird. It's like that 99, 100%. This is one of the first Rotten Tomatoes movies where I'm like, wow, look at this overwhelmingly positive score. Like there has to be something here, right? It has to be an instant classic. It has to be something special. Do you remember that when this Rotten Tomato score came out? Was it a big deal?
I would say, yeah. I feel like this is the time, mid 2010s, was like really important to have a good Rotten Tomatoes score.
Yeah. It's not really now. It's kind of like it used to be a badge of honor, and now I feel like it's not. And I feel like people like sneeze at the fact, oh, this is 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. This is a 99. This is a 98. Now I'm going to try and poke holes through this as much as I can. And here you just accepted like, wow, this is a great movie. I'm going to really have a good time at the movie theater.
But
You know?
if it also feels like back then, like 10 years ago, it was harder to get that like 99, 98%. I feel like more stuff, more content, whether it's movies or TV shows, just get high 90s all the time. And like, what was something that we just reviewed? The Fall Guy, high 80s. Like it's just easier to
Yeah.
get I don't know if there's more critics out there reviewing on Rotten Tomatoes, and obviously if you see something you're more likely than not going to enjoy it, especially in a movie theater. You're going to give it the benefit of the doubt, so you're going to give it the tomato instead of the rotten green splat. So I don't know if there's been something different in the past 10 years. It's just I feel like it's a lot easier to get a higher score on Rotten Tomatoes now versus it was 10 years ago. It's thus less important.
And I don't think audience members lost trust with critics like they have now, right? Where you have like Rotten Tomatoes, how true are their scores? Is there any fraudulence to them? Are there any people getting paid off, right? When we think about like major IP, here it felt pure. It's like, wow, it was really rare to have a score this high. And for like a Tom Hardy led movie. And then you hear that Tom Hardy, he is like the namesake of the movie, but really the engine of this movie is Charlize Theron, one of the best action stars of all time, heroines, and this kind of cemented her as like a absolute action star legend. She was already an Oscar winning actress for Monster back in 2004, I think, for a 2003 movie. I think that's about right. Ricky Flex can double check me at some point, but it was crazy to see like Tom Hardy in his prime, and then he is not really, like I said, that engine, right? Think about Fury Road, think about car chases, think about trucks, think about monster trucks. She is, and then she is the one eventually having her character be given a prequel. Ricky Flex. What do you remember about Charlize Theron during this time? Unless you were gonna add something else, looked like you were chomping at the bit to say something.
No, I'll just say well, actually I'll say the awards first. Charlize Theron won in '04,
Okay.
and she was also nominated for something else in like 2000. I forget, or like something other than Monster. And then obviously
Okay.
she was nominated later after Fury Road for Bombshell. So she's 3-time Oscar. I know that, but I don't know the third movie. But I think a weird thing with Charlize Theron at this time in 2015 is that I'm not gonna say she was on a down, but she wasn't doing as well as she was in the early 2000s. Like the year before where she did Snow White, the Chris Hemsworth Snow White. She did no, sorry, that was 2 years before. The year before she did the Seth MacFarlane A Million Ways to Die in the West, like comedy. And
Underratedly funny. I'll stand on that.
but like a few years earlier, 2012 Prometheus, like fine.
Good.
Like the great movie, but then before that it's like Hancock, The Road. Like I don't know, like it's just a kind of like a crossroads for her a little bit. Not as in like good or bad, for the most part fine as in the movies she's in, but it's like what type of movie do you want to be in after winning your Oscar? And I don't know, she's been in a couple action movies here and there, but like what do you want to be known as? And she didn't, it seemed like it just didn't really know some IP in there. But then this comes out and it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do Atomic Blonde after this. I'm gonna do The Old Guard, and I'm not gonna. And she's Fast and Furious. She did Fast and Furious right after this. So like this pretty much cemented that, as you said, I totally agree with you. Her as first and foremost an action star, and then she also can dabble in the Oscar baity dramatic acting as well.
She was definitely the best performance in this movie. She's the heart of it, and I think Tom Hardy gets undeserved hate, I think, for this movie. And this was at the time where he is like covering his face a little bit. You think eventually with Dunkirk in 2017, Bane in 2012 with Dark Knight Rises, but here he has like his face being covered for basically the first third of the movie. But I think the script kind of does him a little bit of an injustice with the amount of lines he's given. A lot of times when he has lines in this movie, he's not being shown on screen. It's actually zooming in on Charlize Theron with him as like a background, but it's like a voiceover. But I do think there's something juicy about the character, and I think there's something juicy about the performance, the loss that he's gone through, the guilt that he feels, the hope that he's searching for. I think he's got one of the best. He's got one of the best like set of eyes in Hollywood. Christopher Nolan's talked about that. That's why he always wears the mask and everything like that. Like he can do enough acting with like how he's feeling based on what his eyes are telling the audience. So I think people kind of hate on the Hardy performance because like it's Mad Max Fury Road, but like Mad Max isn't given almost the same type of love in terms of on being like speaking on screen dialogue type of moments as like a Charlize Theron, and he's limited, like he's very like brief, he's very one sentence or less. But I think you go on a pretty good journey with him. You go with him, right, feeling that sense of loss, feeling like he's let so many people down in his life, and then right, him being defensive, all right, and very restrictive, and then him building this relationship with Furiosa, and then almost having this newly acquainted family. I do think they're an excellent duo, and I think they do a nice job playing off each other. But do you think Hardy in this movie was underrated or overrated?
For sure underrated now. And I agree with you. I'm glad you said it because I was going to say I think limited's the perfect word for this performance. The writing, like there was so much like juice to go into that storyline, and they just did it through like every time like Tom Hardy was in action, then it'll just show you a flash of his daughter or something, and then he would get hit in the face or something. And I think George Miller could have done a lot more writing and visually with that, with his character versus what they did with Charlize Theron's as a supporting character. So
well, she was a lead, dude. She was a lead.
I know, but it's a Mad Max movie. It's I just think there's a lot of story that could have ran with the Max character. And I'm not saying it was a right or wrong decision. It just I think the way they executed it was incorrect. But the Charlize Theron, like rewatching it, it's still unbelievable. Is it maybe overrated now? Potentially. I think social media kind of goes crazy about it now. I think at the time, I thought like looking back on it, prepping for this pod, I thought she was nominated for an Oscar. The way people talk about this movie. And rewatching it, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I would have done that. I wouldn't have nominated her. I wouldn't. But the way people freaking talk about her online, I literally thought she was nominated for an Oscar because this movie got nominated for 10 Oscars too.
It won 6.
Yeah, this was like the Revenant year. This is wait, no, it's not.
Nah,
what is this?
2015. So this is like year like The Big Short.
Spotlight won Best Picture. Like, it was just like, holy crap. But like the story was Mad Max winning 6 Oscars not Spotlight winning. The Big Short was nominated this year, I think.
That's why I want to talk. Like that's why I was talking about. This felt like a coronation for George Miller. Like no other Mad Max movie had ever been nominated, and then all of a sudden he comes out with Fury Road 30 years after the last like Mad Max movie, and it gets nominated for 10 Oscars. Right? He must have had this idea brewing for a long time. Right, and that's true because like I don't know if you know this, like Fury Road, there was initially going to be Fury Road was in development like in 2003 with Mel Gibson returning to star, right? And then he had to wait till 2015. Tom Hardy becomes the name, and then it eventually gets made. What were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say it's just different because the previous Mad Max movies, they're more like the typical 80s action movies. They're not like, we're going to get certified fresh Rotten Tomatoes, and it's going to be a critical darling and
feels a little
Oscar
artsy,
movie.
like the visuals, the cinematography, like the sound editing and the sound mixing, like they're all like it's so good. That's what I'm saying. It like this one felt like it transcended what the traditional action movie was. People just didn't take it, though it didn't view it the same way you view a lot of those action movies that come out in the 21st century. This one was just at another level that people respected it more so than almost any other
Right.
action movie made in the last 20 years.
Yeah, and like look at what it won like for the Oscars. Like it didn't win best cinematography. Like what did it win? It won for best sound. It won best costume. Won best hairstyle. It won best film editing. Film
Yeah.
editing, a precursor for potentially best picture. It won best film editing, and like earlier in the night, and then people were like, "Does this actually have a chance for best picture?" So it was just a crazy year, and it's just like, yeah, this did definitely cement George Miller on like that visionary pedestal that you were talking about beforehand. And just for Mad Max, it's like, all right, well, let's keep rolling with this IP now. We don't have to wait another 30 years for another Mad Max. Now people are bought in. We're not overlooking this to Star Wars or to Indiana Jones. It's like, no, this is now in 2024. This is going to be better. Furiosa is light years better than Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny last year.
Yes, and we if we had Mad Max Fury Road, if it's any other like action sci-fi franchise, you get the next movie 3 years later. Whether it's a prequel, sequel, spin-off, whatever it may be. We have waited 9 years for the next Mad Max movie. And this tells me the level of craftsmanship that's going into this is going to be super high level. And it's going to be George Miller back. And he's returning to the iconic character Furiosa. You brought up Charlize Theron. I mean, I don't think she deserved an Oscar nomination like for that type of performance in an action movie. It's definitely good that it got nominated for all the technical awards. You know, it makes sense. But Charlize Theron just looks so iconic. Has the iconic like poster of her on her knees, like in the movie. What a powerful moment that was when she recognizes like the green place, right? It's not there anymore, right? So it's the devastation that goes with that. I think that's something where her uniqueness and the moments that she has, that's what Tom Hardy doesn't have, despite the movie being named Fury Road, Mad Max Fury Road. Here, I was excited when this was greenlit because there was so much meat on the bone for a prequel. It felt like when I was rewatching Mad Max Fury Road, they wanted to say, George Miller is basically trying to say, this is the next movie I want to make, right? These are the people that know who Furiosa was. This is the legend of her and her mother. This is what her home used to look like. Tease, tease, tease. And there's not much backstory given on Furiosa and her relationship with Immortan Joe, right? There's not much there. You just know that she is trying to save this group of women, and you just know based on her character, based on her decision making, what kind of person she is. Now we get to see like how this icon came to be. Like, how is she created? What are the things that shaped and formed her? And they talk about her mother, like dying 3 days after she's separated from the group that she's native to. In comes Chris Hemsworth. This movie, you know, all the seeds were planted in Fury Road for this type of story. It felt like it was only a matter of time, and then came the decision to recast Charlize Theron. That's something we have to get to eventually as well.
It felt earned. A lot of legacy sequels or prequels we roll our eyes at. We were like, oh, like even like when Top Gun Maverick got announced, like we were pumped because Tom Cruise is our guy and Top Gun, but like still we weren't like saying this is gonna be the best like movie and save movie theaters. We weren't saying that. We were like, oh, hopefully this like is a fun time at the box office, you know, or like Beetlejuice later this year. Like we don't need that. Did that earn a sequel? Like no, like Fury Road earned that prequel. It earned it. And like you said, it was calling for us. It was begging to say, go to the box office, see this movie, and want to see a Furiosa prequel. That's what it was doing. Now, you mentioned the scene with her on her knees. You passed it. So I'm watching the movie here at our childhood home today with our dad. And he was like in and out. He's not really watching. He's like, looking stuff up on his laptop, not related to the movie, just like hobbies and stuff. And that scene's going on when when she's seeing the other mothers for the first time in 7,000 days. And then she finds out about it. She's on her knees, and then the backdrop goes, and he goes, "Man, this movie's boring, huh?" And then I was like what?
He missed the first hour, 20 minutes, dude. Like he has to be able to suck it up for 10 minutes bro.
I was just like, you literally, this is the first part where they're actually stopped. They're literally stopped and they don't have a car. Like, and of course it's going to be a little boring. Not boring, but slower. I was just like, oh my God, this is classic. This is classic or dad.
That's why also Charlize Theron, like this role is not accustomed to like an Oscar nomination because the movie just moves at such a breakneck pace for the first hour 20 minutes, and then you have that lull, and then the acting takes hold, and who is commanding the screen in those slow type of moments is Charlize Theron.
Yeah.
She is.
Yeah.
She's just the script lends to her.
And when I was clicking play on Max, man, like you talk about that pace. This is what I'm going to be really tuning in for Furiosa, because I believe Furiosa is like 2.5 hours, I think. Mad Max Fury Road's a crisp 2 hours flat.
One of the best things that, like, aging wise, that's one of the best parts about it. Every other major sci-fi epic would be 2.5 to 3 hours.
Right. So Furiosa, they got the extra runtime. Warner Bros. Legendary, I think. No, Warner Bros. I forget the other one. That partners with Warner Bros. They were like, hey, nope, George Miller, we trust you. Take the screen time. Like, you got it. We'll see if this movie has any lags, because again, it's not going to be a literally 2-day event where they're going across the desert. Or Fury Road. It's going to be a saga. It's going to be like over a span of 10 years or so. So hopefully we don't get those lags that we did not get in Fury Road.